وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى, and seek provision, and verily the best provision that you can actually seek is taqwa. There is inherent within this a teaching of minimalism. There's inherent within this understanding that we shouldn't splurge out and just buy objects and goods and assets and whatever and stock up and have loads and loads of provisions in order to meet with all eventualities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, don't do that. Obviously do the basics, but then actually the best taqwa is to have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that'll get you far. And I was reflecting on this whole trend that we've seen of minimalism that's come about, this movement away from clutter. And at heart, I think it's a movement away from an attachment to objects and things and items and stuff that just fills our house. And I think it's not just objects, but it's also a minimalist approach to everything. And this is very much a prophetic way. I mean, Rasulullah, examples of the kind of minimalism that he had. He, of course, would only eat 1/3 of his fill. Like his stomach would always be 1/3 empty, and 1/3 would be water, and 1/3 would be the actual food. So that's minimalism in food. And I think that's completely passed us by in an age of gluttony. He used to have 3 thobes, and he would rotate between them. And sometimes he would, run out of thobes where, they were, if one was dirty and the other one became dirty, then he would have to wait until they dried in order to have enough clothes to wear. His furniture in his household, he had a mattress of palm fiber, he had some bowls and some crockery, and he had armor, and that was basically it. I mean, there's a famous hadith about how Aisha radiallahu anha, she got these cushions, and they had pictures of, I think, birds on them, and there's that whole discussion about images and in the household and stuff, and this hadith comes into play for that. But the thing that I took away from that, one of the things, was that having new cushions in the household was a massive deal for the Prophet, because if you've only got a handful of pieces of furniture, then having cushions, and then to say that you should get rid of these cushions is a pretty big indication of how little you have in your material goods. And then Prophet ﷺ, he was minimalist in his speech as well. So he said that I've been favored over other prophets in 6 different ways, and one of the ways was that I've been given jawami'ul kalim. I've been given the gift of concise speech. And Mohsin, as you and I as lawyers and people who have to spend time editing our videos and audio, we know very well that we don't have that gift of concise speech. But actually,
I was just going to say actually that is such a fascinating statement of the Prophet ﷺ, because when you're growing up and going through GCSEs and all this stuff, we are taught in schools, or certainly I was taught in schools, or you're encouraged in order to hit the right marks in the exam, to use lots of different words and quite flowery language and stuff like that. As you get older, and certainly in our profession, what clients really value, and the kind of the really good training that me and you have had, is really all about getting your drafting down into really quite concise, clear language. And actually, when you're talking to clients, and even simple things like emails, just get the point across quickly, and don't beat around the bush and all that sort of stuff. And that is exactly what it seems to me, exactly what the Prophet ﷺ was gifted with, that concise speech. And it's so important, frankly, as a skill for any Muslim out there, any person out there, because there's nothing more frustrating than hearing people like me and you going on for ages.
Agreed. And I think that with this minimalism stuff, there's so much benefit that we can get from it, just generally as well. So there's this whole idea of zuhud in Islam, this asceticism, and having a very, very simple approach to life. And I think that throughout our tradition, there was a real celebration of this whole approach. And I think one of the big benefits that we get from minimalism is that it makes us see things in the right perspective. It gets our dunya and akhirah priorities completely in the right order. It gets us to think about the akhirah as opposed to the material dunya, the things that will not last. وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. The akhirah is better and everlasting. And there's some very interesting different quotations that I found. Al-Mustawrid al-Fihri, he related that the Prophet ﷺ said that the dunya as compared to the akhirah is just like when one of you dips his finger in the sea. Let him see how much water his finger will carry. Like if you take out that finger from the sea, massive sea, and the water that is on it, the dunya, this thing that we so strive for, I mean, it just boggles the mind. This dunya is compared to the droplets on that finger. And then the akhirah is the rest of the water in that ocean. It just boggles the mind. And I think, our priorities, when we listen to a hadith like that, they need to change. And then there's another hadith, how Prophet ﷺ, he said that nothing fills the son of Adam except dust. So nothing really will fulfill or satiate a human being until death. That's what he's indicating. Like when that mouth is filled with dirt as he's buried, that's the only thing that will satiate him. And I think that's very true. I mean, you and I, we've experienced this in our life, that as you grow older, you become more prosperous, you do have more financial success, but that's never ever enough. And there's always someone more, there's always something more to do. And I'm sure that even billionaires, when they have 1 billion, they look to get 50 billion, and they'll feel that they're poor relative to who they're comparing themselves to. And so this whole minimalist thinking is actually something that I think is very, very prophetic, in that it kind of takes us back to our base and realigns what our priorities really should be.